The mom accused of killing one of her daughters and trying to kill another one of her daughters and her boyfriend with poisoned wine at Thanksgiving dinner is making a shocking request. She wants out of jail, and the reason? It's one we didn't see coming. Plus,
I still love the woman that I was with. I still love the woman that bore me my child. The woman that's down in that courthouse right now deserves to die.
that is the father of the girl who allegedly drank the wine and lost her life. Her mom, Gudrun Linda Casper Leinenkugel, and not only is she facing murder charges and attempted murder charges for what allegedly happened on Thanksgiving, I have new information on how she allegedly killed another man in 2007, and there's another bombshell here. Authorities states away are reportedly looking into another death, and it is Gudrun's ex-husband. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. We have a lot to get to. I'm about to show you text messages that Gudrun Linda Casper Leinenkugel allegedly sent the father of their daughter, a girl who she allegedly killed. And this was before Gudrun's arrest, and she is asking about life insurance. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the motion her team just filed asking for her to be granted pretrial release. The 52-year-old's defense says that when she was booked on multiple murder charges in January, she had been breastfeeding her 3-year-old child, and she wants to continue to do that. The documents also say that she has an 8-year-old child. Here is an image of Gudrun Linda Casper Leinenkugel in court in North Carolina per WLOS TV. You can see she smiles as she enters the courtroom. She is charged with first-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree attempted murder, and 3 counts of distribution of certain food and beverage prohibited for what she allegedly did on Thanksgiving in 2025. And she's facing another murder charge in connection to the death of a man in 2007.
I knew her as Linda Jean Casper. Where this Gudrun and Leinenkugel came from, I have no clue.
That is Travis Peterson. He lives in Wisconsin, and he is the dad of Leila Livis, the 32-year-old daughter of Gudrun Linda Casper Leinenkugel, the woman who died as a result of the wine that her mom allegedly gave her at Thanksgiving. This is a picture that Travis sent me of he and his daughter when he says she came to visit in Wisconsin last summer. Now, these are pictures that he shared with us showing Travis, Gudrun, and Leila as a young family back in the early 90s. He said they ended up separating. They were never married. And then Gudrun and Leila left when Leila was young to go to North Carolina. Now, I will refer to the defendant as Gudrun since that is reportedly now her legal name, and that is what the court system is referring to her as. But Travis says he knew her as Linda. Travis did unveil a lot in our conversation, and I'll show you those text messages that he says Gudrun sent him after his daughter died in just a moment. This was before Gudrun was arrested, and she had a very specific financial question, allegedly, for Travis. But before I get to that part of it, some of the other new details we've learned, I want to walk you through this case, how Travis knows it. And he says it was an early day in December of last year when the woman who he knew as Linda, the mother of their daughter, gave him a call seemingly out of the blue.
I first learned of Leila's death December 2nd when Linda called me. I had an unknown number from North Carolina, so I just picked it up. As soon as I heard her voice, I didn't even need her to identify herself. But she wanted to know when I got done with work, after some little chit chat. And I'm like, nah, what's up? She's wanted me to wait till after work. I'm like, nah, you don't call me. So what's going on? And it took a little while, but she finally told me Leila was dead. And everybody in my department knew not to come by my desk because I lost it.
At the time, Gudrun was not facing charges. She wasn't arrested until weeks later on January 16th. Along with speaking with Travis for this episode, I also have newly unsealed search warrants that lay out what police say allegedly happened during what became a deadly Thanksgiving dinner. So let's go back to that dinner. November 30th, this family had gathered at Gudrun's home at Schmidt Terrace in Hendersonville, North Carolina, outside of Asheville. So at the table, you reportedly had a dozen people, including Gudrun, her 32-year-old daughter, Leila Livis. You have Gudrun's other daughter, her name is Mia, and then you have Mia's boyfriend, a man named Richard. Now, there were 2 other men who were there named in the search warrant. One man's first name is Landon, and police write that Gudrun referred to him as her boyfriend. But you also had another man, his name was Jeffrey. And Gudrun's daughter, Mia, says that Jeffrey was her mom's boyfriend. So interesting dynamic there. Now, at the dinner, some members of this group enjoyed some wine. And later in the evening, Gudrun's daughter Mia's boyfriend, his name is Richard, he started to feel sick. And this is what Gudrun allegedly told Travis about their daughter Leela.
She didn't say much about the day other than after Leela went home, she called after she got over the mountains. And that's about an hour or two drive, depending on conditions, that Leela was feeling sick, just in case anybody else at the gathering was feeling sick. Flu-like symptoms, upset stomach and all that. And then she said the next day when she tried to text and call Leela, she got no reply. And so she called the cops, and they basically found her dead in her home.
Gudrun reportedly told authorities that Leela, Mia, and Richard, they all drank from the same open bottle of wine. And the document states that Mia took a sip of the wine, she spit it out, she said it just tasted off. But Leela and Richard, they continued to drink that wine. An investigation revealed that the three of them consumed a chemical that is called acetonitrile. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as the EPA, say it is a clear, colorless liquid, and it can be used as a solvent for lithium batteries. And once inside the body, it can turn into cyanide, which is a potentially deadly poison. Now, the agencies are clear that this chemical, it is toxic and it causes symptoms like headaches, nausea, and it can be fatal if a person consumes it. So this is incredibly dangerous stuff. Now, Leela was dead on December 1st. Richard, the boyfriend, he had to go to the hospital because he was feeling sick too, and he was there for nearly a week before he was discharged. Police say that Richard's blood showed toxic levels of cyanide, and he was at what they referred to as a level 10. Doctors say anything between 0.2 and 5 are levels that are considered toxic for this chemical. Now, Mia told police that her mom was the one who allegedly retrieved a bottle of wine and then presented it to everyone at the dinner. She thought the wine appeared already open. Maybe it had a little bit missing from it. Now, Travis told me, the dad who lives in Wisconsin, that he went to his daughter's funeral after Gudrun called him and told him that she had passed away because she got sick and was found dead in her home after this Thanksgiving dinner. But at that point in time, when he went to the funeral, Gudrun was not facing any charges. And he described this as the interaction they had, which was his first time seeing the woman who he knew as Linda since years prior when he went to their daughter's high school graduation, he says.
Tried to meet with her beforehand so that I could just ask her questions alone. I wasn't able to ask everything that I wanted to, but I don't know if I'm rewriting history. I don't know if I'm reinventing things here, but when I talked to her, she didn't appear to be there. She appeared wooden. And when I would go to give her a hug, I mean, it's like hugging a plank of wood.
Travis found it odd behavior, and police seemed to find the behavior of Gudrun odd as well. Mia said that her mom didn't have any of that wine because she was allergic to grapes. Now, Gudrun appears to have been open with authorities that she thought the wine might have had something to do with her daughter's death, according to these unsealed search warrants. A doctor said that Gudrun came to the hospital and told them that the wine was stored in a place close to where they keep chemicals that are used in their barn, including rat poison. Now, these are pictures that were provided in the search warrants of her phone that deputies are going through. Before dinner, authorities say that Gudrun searched, quote, "What happens if I accidentally ingest acetonitrile?" In a police interview, they say Gudrun told them that someone who lives in her house, who she calls Uncle Dan, bought the chemical on eBay. It's unclear who that person is. She said the reason that she couldn't buy it herself was because she had issues logging into Amazon and eBay. Police also say that Gudrun told them that the wine was stored in an area where the kids play and they may have, quote, got to it.
A sergeant down there called me and asked me several questions, and she kept asking, "Are you sure you're Leela's biological dad?" Yeah, I'm like, why wouldn't I be? I'm not a nut. Like, yes, Leela's my daughter. And They told me that Lynn had said a 2-year-old, Beatrice, her 2-year-old daughter, put the poison in the wine. And no, have you seen a 2-year-old do anything of trying to take contents from one container to another? No, not possible. But the one thing that really did it, that convinces me she's guilty, she told the police that Leela's biological father, before Leela was born, was test driving a car. Just so I get this right. Was test driving a car and got into a bad accident, which left him paralyzed from the neck down. After a while, he told Linda he didn't want her to suffer through this and committed suicide. And then Leela's biological father's brother adopted Leela because he didn't want Leela to grow up without a father.
Now let's get to these text messages that Travis says Gudrun sent him before her arrest. Travis says that after Leela died, Gudrun texted him asking about life insurance and whether Leela had a policy in her name. She allegedly says, quote, "I just don't want to miss anything that I'm supposed to be doing for her." Travis says he sent a check to Gudrun to help cover the funeral expenses for their daughter. Travis says that he texted Gudrun in late January trying to track down their daughter's death certificate, but he got no answer. Now, these are his claims that police have not verified.
Linda was arrested January 16th. That's why I didn't get any return text from her. And then one of the articles had a number to the Hendersonville police. Another article, it said something about maybe this was a life insurance scheme. And I go through the text that Linda and I had been exchanging back and forth, and one of them was she was asking about a life insurance that my mom and dad had put on Leela. But that was when she was born back in 93. And I think when she turned 1, they gave it to us. And we cashed it in because we needed some money. And I told her that. But she insisted that I question my mom and dad again, so I did. They verified my story, except for my mom says it was a life insurance on me, not Leela. So I'll have to believe my mom on that one.
How long ago was it that she had asked about the life insurance policy?
Oh, early to mid-December, right after I'd gotten back from the funeral.
The authorities have yet to comment on any possible motive in this case. Travis says that to his knowledge, Leela had a good relationship with her mom, which certainly makes this even more of a mystery.
On a day-to-day, I would not know. From what she told me, they were pretty tight. Leela was looking at purchasing land in North Carolina, and she was going to have her mom build the house for her.
And
never gave me any indication that anything was wrong between them. I would tell Leela I still loved her mother, and she's like, "Yeah, I know."
not a lot of people would assume that they would have a partner or someone they know who would be capable of what police are accusing her of. But like, is there anything about her past or anything about the time that you knew her where you would have ever thought that we'd be where we are today?
Never, ever on my bingo cards. In fact, I would be defending Leela or Linda today against all these accusations, except for two to three things that the police told me she told them under interrogation.
Leela's alleged murder isn't the only one that Gudrun is accused of. Police say in 2007, Gudrun found a man named Misha Schmidt. He also went by Michael, and she found him dead in his camper on the property where Gudrun lives today, the same property where that Thanksgiving dinner was held. Schmidt was the property owner. Gudrun lived in the house on the property. Gudrun told police back then that Schmidt was an alcoholic and a drug user. The last time Gudrun said she had seen Schmidt was 2 days prior when they had a few drinks together. Police write that when Schmidt's autopsy came back, it showed that he died of acetonitrile poisoning, the same chemical in the system of her daughter who died and her daughter's boyfriend who had to go to the hospital. Schmidt's level was 300. Now, it's unclear why authorities are now charging Gudrun with this crime after nearly 2 decades. Back in 2007, and this is an interesting part of the search warrant that was unsealed, authorities write that an insurance company said that a life insurance policy was taken out 5 days before Schmidt's death. They also say the description of him on the application did not match the one provided to the medical examiner. Police say the policy did pay Schmidt's wife $25,000 after his death. It is unclear where Schmidt's wife is today. We also have some new information that authorities in another state are reportedly revisiting the death of a man who was once married to Gudrun Linda Casper Leinenkugel, and his death was in 2017. The local North Carolina paper, the Hendersonville Lightning, reports that police in rural Sawyer County, Wisconsin, are revisiting the death of a man named Elroy Lund Jr. He died in his 70s in 2017 when he was married to a woman who was 28 years younger than him. Her name? Gudrun. Now, Lund reportedly had health issues, according to the newspaper, so his death had not been looked at as suspicious, but the paper is now saying, with the charges and the accusations that Gudrun's now facing in North Carolina, authorities in Sawyer County are revisiting this case. Now, Gudrun, it is important to note, has not been charged in connection to that man's death. Now, in our conversation, Travis raised some major questions about Gudrun and her past. It appears that Gudrun was trying to make it as a restaurateur in Asheville, North Carolina. There's an article in the local paper called the Mountain Express back in 2016 when Gudrun was interviewed about how she and her managing partners began planning the Patton Public House in July 2013. Now, these are pictures that are still up from the now closed restaurant's Instagram account. And in the article, Gudrun says that she had been working since she was 13 years old. Quote, "I owned a laundromat. I had to learn how to run the business and fix the machines. It was a good learning experience," she said. The article goes on to say that she has opened 6 restaurants and bars across the country. It is unclear where those restaurants were. Now, in the article, Gudrun says that her restaurant was inspired by the comfort food and beer supplied by the European public houses she grew up with. And she claims to have spent time traveling between Minnesota and Wisconsin and Germany as a child. Now, you remember Travis raising some questions about Gudrun's name because he knew her as Linda when they were together. The Hendersonville Lightning reports that she changed her name to Gudrun Linda Casper Leinenkugel in October of 2004.
Nah, she'd never been to Germany as far as I know. When I was with her, her family was her mom and dad were from Spring Valley, Wisconsin. They moved up to Exland to run the laundromat up there. The locals considered them outsiders, so they never came by the laundromat much. And only after they had sold the laundromat to a local did the laundromat take off. That's the story I got from them. But from what I'm reading in the newspapers, what I'm reading from other sources, I don't know what to believe anymore. This is not the woman I was with. This is not the woman that I still love to this day. The woman who bore me our child and was just wonderful.
I know that she's, I mean, obviously the mother of your child, it's different than, relationships you might have with other people. But even through all of this, like you see what she's accused of, the images of her in the courtroom, do you still love her?
I still love the woman that I was with. I still love the woman that bore me my child. The woman that's down in that courthouse right now deserves to die.
Now, again, those are strong words to end our conversation with Travis. Prosecutors say they're not going for the death penalty in this case, and it is important to note that Gudrun is presumed innocent, and everything we're talking about are allegations, and just allegations at this point. Gudrun's case will next be in court on May 11th, and it's to review that motion her defense just filed asking for her to be granted pretrial release. Now, on top of Gudrun saying that she wants to continue to breastfeed her 3-year-old as a reason she should not be in jail, her defense also says that she suffers from medical conditions and being held in pretrial detention puts her health at risk. And they also argue that the allegations she's facing at this point, they're circumstantial, and the allegations are specific in nature, they say, and don't show that she poses a generalized risk to the public. Joining us now from North Carolina to talk a little bit more about this is Jason St. Aubin, a criminal defense attorney. I know you just started your own firm, St. Aubin Law. You've been at this for over 20 years. I don't know how many cases like this one you've seen in over your 20 years. It just seems like there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of just questions even still at this point as we're learning more information from law enforcement and as like these search warrants get released and more stuff gets unsealed. Like at this point, like where does your mind go when it looks at the case against Leinenkugel and like how strong it seems prosecutors have a case at this point?
That question goes to the core of every homicide. How strong is the case? And the interesting thing about these particular types of cases is that in any case where the alleged weapon of choice is a poison, it's very rare that you're going to have actual, what they call direct evidence of that poisoning. Meaning it's going to be super rare, unless the person's really bad at poisoning, that they're going to be seen pouring the poison into whatever substance that whoever is going to consume it might have. So in almost every one of these cases, you have what we call circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is just a fancy term for things you don't see but are likely potentially true. So the more circumstantial evidence that is in a case, the easier it is to prosecute. And the law actually weighs both of those things equally. So just because somebody didn't see something happen, it doesn't mean that we can't prove that thing happened. And in a case like this, where it's alleged that the poisoning occurred during a dinner attended by around a dozen people, and at least potentially 6 of those folks partook in what was supposedly wine that was tainted, well, that becomes much stronger the more people you involve. And I think that's a unique fact of this case.
So I know prosecutors in the past have alleged that she had, and I quote, "What happens if I accidentally ingest acetonitrile in her search history?" And they allege that that was searched prior to dinner, which I could see as a prosecutor, you present that to court and a lot of jurors would say, like, okay, like that definitely starts to like build the narrative for me about what potentially happened here. You're a criminal defense attorney. Like, how would you push back on that? You know, how do you in a case like that, you know, push back against that piece of evidence if that's presented?
So first of all, okay is a fair reaction to that. There are numerous others.
Just trying to think as a juror, I'd be like, all right, now we're starting to go in that direction a little bit. Yeah.
I think that, you know, there's a lot that clouds the issues in this case, starting with the fact that it's really difficult to separate it from her previous allegation that will likely be included in this particular allegation. One of the issues you'll face as a criminal defense attorney in this case is what they call 404B evidence. Again, a number and a letter that in plain English simply mean that the prior allegation of her using poison to harm someone else is likely going to be tied to this case and brought into evidence. So that makes things a bit more difficult. But in terms of her search history, I think with devices nowadays, everyone has a search history. Everyone has items on that search history. And when I do what they call voir dire or jury selection, I'm always asking folks, you know, nobody would probably want everybody to see every single item in their search history because you might not have searched it for the reason that people think you did. Taking things out of context can be a very difficult thing. The thing is that can be placed into context. If, for instance, that particular chemical that created cyanide was found either in residue in the bottle of the wine, or if it was actually cyanide that was found in that particular person's bloodstream. Now, the warrants that I've read and seen, they don't talk about the medical examiner's results in the case, but you know that would be a really complicated issue. if that particular substance was the one that was either located on the premises or that the cyanide it created was located in the bloodstream. There are other defenses and other ways of distancing a client from, the potential death sentence, or potentially, even a life sentence under certain circumstances. But those involve mental health defenses or other types of things that may or may not be available.
Because I wonder too, if you're a defense attorney on this case, I mean, you have 12 people sitting around this table, and I know that one of her daughters who survived alleges that she was the one, that Gudrun was the one who brought the wine to the table, but also, they live on a farm, it seems, or some sort of like homestead that has, the need to have this chemical on it because you have rats. But I believe I read that in one of the warrants. Like, it seems like that there's, when you have 12 people in a room, even though she's the one accused, like there's opportunity there for a defense attorney, just looking at this one particular part of the case, to kind of like raise some doubt in jurors' minds.
Oh, absolutely, because of the fact that, number one, there's just so many people there that may have access to those chemicals, may be able to use those chemicals. It could be some sort of accidental issue, just given the fact that what I read in the warrant was that the bottle was already open, and who knows if she opened it or if somebody else had opened it. Certainly, there's a balance of suspicious facts, though, that are there, such as the fact that she didn't drink any of that wine. However, her own surviving daughter says that she's allergic to that wine, and she knows it from previous experience. So that would explain why she might not have drank it. So I think that also motive might be an issue, because I'm not really seeing anywhere that her and her family didn't get along to the extent that, motive would become a relevant premise to trying to poison this many folks. It's just that, I think, in and of itself, there's a lot to sink your teeth into, in terms of why would somebody go to such great lengths to hurt so many other people if there's no motive to do it. It seems almost equally probable, unless you're presented with much other evidence, that there could be circumstances under which it was accidental.
And there's still so much, that we don't know at this point about the family dynamic that was at play. We're still trying to learn more about Gudrun Casper's background and where she came from. I know that she was, trying to open a restaurant in Asheville at some point. This 2007 case, the victim's name is Misha Schmidt. I thought it was interesting that his name was Michael Schmidt in a previous warrant. So it just seems like the information there is a little foggy. You try to look him up. There's a line in an old newspaper just saying that he had died suddenly. We learned through these search warrants that acetonitrile was in his system when he died. I mean, what more would you need if you're a prosecutor on this case, beyond the fact that, the link here appears to be that chemical between the death of Leela Livis and then Schmidt's death all the way back in 2007?
I know another Misha who changed his name to Mike. It's, I think, a very common name to switch around. But I will say this. One of the things that I've noticed throughout my 20 plus years working in violent criminal cases in North Carolina is that a lot of times it takes one or two usually times until a prosecutor may notice, especially if somebody is surreptitious about how or what they're doing. A lot of crimes actually go unsolved, more than I think people believe or want to know. And what occurs is, over time, whether it's a circumstance where one child goes to the hospital, and only when the second goes to the hospital do they realize maybe one of the parents is harming those children, or when one person ends up dying in a mysterious but explainable way, where potentially they wouldn't want to order that an autopsy be conducted or a toxicology screen be conducted. But when something like this happens, I think they dig real deep. So at this point, I feel like that, bringing that case to light, I think creates a very interesting challenge for the defense, but also, potentially for the prosecution, in terms of then getting those cases to be jointly tried, because the prejudice to that person having them both tried together would be very, very high. So it's not the highest bar for a prosecutor to meet. But I think that, if I were the defense attorney, I would be working very, very hard to distance her from that previous case as much as I could.
And that was my next question, because, going back to being in the mind of a jury and kind of like, okay, let's see what the prosecutors are going with. Like, you tell me that she's already been accused of a murder from 20 years ago, and then suddenly you're looking at Thanksgiving dinner a little bit different than maybe the way the criminal defense attorney would want to paint that if this goes to trial. So kind of a couple questions. What case do you try first? And do those cases get tried together?
So first of all, I would say this: jurors are awesome. We're very lucky. We have the best system in the world when it comes to criminal justice. Even if you watch the television and you have questions or concerns about how cases are tried or how they're conducted, we have what amounts to the best system I think you can have, and we should be proud of what we built. But because of that, we do have protection, safeguards, and things like that that will help someone in this position to be fairly tried. And I think that if you're the prosecutor, number one, you're going to point to the similarities between the cases, regardless of the time difference between when they occurred. This type of thing, it's not usually used to prove, well, you did it once, so you did it again. It's used to prove that the same pattern occurs, so it's not highly unlikely or unreasonable to think that that person might have access to those chemicals or might know more about that situation, given that they were close to something that happened like that before, even if it's not a crime that has been proven against them yet. So it happens a lot in cases of assault. It happens a lot in robberies, where somebody's pattern of doing a certain activity that is being alleged is brought up against them. And the jurors they're all carefully instructed to not think, well, hey, they did it before, they'll do it
Right.
again. And jurors are really good at what they do. So they'll take that evidence and they'll consider it in light of her current alleged activities at Thanksgiving. But it's highly likely they won't be trying the two cases potentially at the same time to avoid that prejudice. And frankly, it may be easier to try a more recent case with surviving witnesses, which is very rare in a case of this nature. Normally, you're talking about a single target that somebody is very carefully looking at and planning and working towards, just that one person. To see this in an environment where it was kind of potentially and allegedly an environment where multiple people were exposed to this substance is extraordinarily rare. I don't think I've really ever seen it, other than like a Tylenol case in the 80s, where that was happening. And that was indiscriminate. This is very targeted, but against more than one person.
Yeah, no, I remember the Netflix documentary just came out on that. I think last year. Prosecutors are not going for the death penalty in this case. What do you make of that decision? Just knowing how North Carolina, as a death penalty state, and typically, certain cases that may have prosecutors going for the death penalty. What do you make about the decision of them not to do it in this particular case?
So until recently, decisions about the death penalty have been extraordinarily rare in North Carolina. In my time in the Charlotte area, I can only recall two cases in which it was actually brought up. One of those was a double police officer homicide that occurred quite some time ago, and that was actually taken off the table when it was revealed that one of the detectives in that case didn't turn over evidence to the defense. So even then, it was removed as a possible penalty, and that individual ended up getting a life sentence. Now, things have changed. There's been a new law passed that actually permits executions of almost any variety, so long as they're declared to be humane by another state. That means that if a convicted inmate that is on death row decides to choose one of those or elect to choose one of those, or the state can't provide the proper method of execution under lethal injection, then they can choose to use a different form of penalty or punishment, that is the death penalty, including firing squads or other means, even electrocution. That was a very recent law that was just passed at the end of last year. So at this point, no real cases have started to progress where those methods have been used or where the death penalty has been more enacted by district attorneys throughout the state. I think it's uncommon in that region of our state to see those types of cases. It's absolutely not a shock that even in this type of case, where there are multiple people that are allegedly targeted in such a way that you would see the state not opt for going for the death penalty. There still is quite an immense cost and quite a lot of appeals and things of that nature that would merit them having a consideration over whether it's worthwhile or not. So I'm not surprised, because it rarely happens, but it could start happening more given what's occurred in our state.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens in this particular case. I mean, just, it's cliche to say shocking allegations, but I think when you read through each piece of information that comes out every time we cover this, it's a shocking case, and we'll see what happens. Jason St. Aubin, criminal defense attorney out of North Carolina. Thank you as always for being with us on Law and Crime. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for having me. It's great to see you, Chris.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also now streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.